There's always madness at the end. That's how all companies fall. Like people wonder, okay, where did Nokia go? Okay, well they have intelligence agency sort of things going on for themselves. But where did the phones go? Where did Kodak go as a company? Where did Blockbuster Video go as an organization? Um, what happened? Where did a lot of the major British high street stores and chains, where did they go? What happened to them? Well, at the end of life, just like people, when you get old, you get a little bit crazy. Your brain starts to disappear and eat itself and not function properly, and you become forgetful and you make mistakes, and you do crazy things. And it's no different for companies at the end of their lives. The company begins to act insane, and it's not only true with companies, it's true with all kinds of organizations, especially political and social organizations, where at the end people go mad. They get up on Monday and they say, do everything with your right hand. And then they get up on Tuesday and they say, do everything with your left hand. And then they get up on Wednesday and they said, we never said anything about hands. And
Yes.
they change from day to day with no memory of any kind of logic or practicality or understanding of what they said previously, and no understanding of the effect of what they're doing on other people. And it's really hard for intelligent people in those situations, especially if you've got a memory and you remember what people did and what people said. And sadly, in the modern world, most people don't have good memories. I think this is because they've been overloaded with too much information, or the systems of education that exist very much exist to fill and then empty, and then fill and then empty, and then fill and then empty the mind. And this is the principle of constant testing, where you learn something and then you throw that learning away because it's no longer useful. You learn it for the test, and then you can forget it because you don't need it again. And you take the new information and learn it for the test, and you can forget it because you don't need it again. Sometimes you build on information, but a lot of it is useless. And this just teaches us to forget. It's the same with, that's what all the television programs are. That's what the daily soap operas and telenovelas are. They're training us to forget, because they're constantly filling our heads with new things, telling us the old is not important. And if you look at what happens with the characters in these programs, the characters are irrational and the characters change, and there's no consistency in their habits. And people just end up copying that. And it's got to an extreme binge state now with Netflix and other channels like that. I'm not sure if Disney Plus is the same. I imagine it is, but where people watch a whole series now in a weekend, and they watch it and then they almost instantly forget about it. And it becomes harder to remember things and focus on things when we get older, because there's so much going on around about us. And the constant media that exists of music and films and books and other things, whatever else we're interested in, the internet, the endless internet, it becomes difficult to focus. It becomes difficult to remember, and to Just like I like to look through the pictures in my phone because I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. Especially if you've got kids. If you're working and you're in a relationship and you've got friends and family and kids and everything else going on, interests and hobbies, and there's a lot going on in your life, and there's a lot that happens every day. And in general, if you ask somebody, okay, 2 weeks ago on Tuesday, what did you do? Like 99% of people have no idea what they, oh, let me check my diary. I'm like, okay, so without the diary, you have no idea what you did. Yep, without the diary. And it's the same for most people. But what does this mean? It means that we're overloaded. The fact that we are not quite sure. In general, for most people are overloaded. You might have, and it's not always a bad thing, but we just kind of have to be careful and be aware and realize, and sometimes some regularity of habit is good in that respect. It can help us remember. But I think that, I don't know, I think that we can do better. There seems to be, as I pointed out earlier, there's endless media channels, yet they all just seem to say the same thing at the end of the day, right? Is any film really different from any other film? There's a couple of various different types and styles and genres, but and people like what they like, and that's cool. But this superhero film is very similar to this superhero film. It's very similar to this superhero film. It is there really much difference between them? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Maybe there is. I don't know. I don't pay much attention to it, but there doesn't seem to be much difference. There's an archetype that of story that is usually followed regarding heroes. So yeah, it's a bad sign for a company when they're constantly changing what they want people to do, and there's no consistency there, and they'll say this is important, then they'll say the opposite is important, almost like they never said what they said before. It's like starting a new race before the old race is finished.
Yes.
It's the good old habits of one thing at a time. Yes, you can sort of multitask in different areas, but let's be logical about the processes and the steps. Let's finish breakfast before we have lunch, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you don't want to be trying to eat both meals at the same time. It's not such a good idea. It might be possible to solve the problem, but it's definitely not the best way to solve the problem. And it's putting people under more strain and more stress, and we can't continue to forever have this exponential growth of prices. Yeah, there's in an organization like this, there's a reason for everything. There's nothing there's nothing that comes down through the system that is random. Yeah, there are very, very specific reasons for the things that are being done, and a lot of people won't talk about it because it's a difficult subject for them. It's a difficult subject for a lot of people to talk about those elements, but they're always there. And it's the elephant in the living room analogy, where there's an elephant in the middle of the living room and nobody wants to talk about the elephant. Everybody wants to ignore the elephant. but the elephant is important, and because it's driving the policies, and it needs to be better communicated, right? I mean, it just that there's a lot of, I'm not sure if it's miscommunication or bad communication. There's a lot of getting people to follow rules without explanations, and you've got to trust that the people in your company are smart enough to understand that. Because if you, it's the old problem with growth within companies, that in order to grow, you have to employ people who are smarter than you. Steve Jobs understood this. Steve Jobs said that he always looked for people that were smarter than him. He always wanted to employ people that were smarter than him. And he said that other people wouldn't do that because they felt threatened and challenged by that. But he knew that if he employed people smarter than him and they employed people smarter than them, there would be exponential intelligence growth. And a lot of people are scared to employ people smarter than them, especially under them, because they think it will be a threat to them. And it will be a threat, but you know, there's risk in everything, right? And the long-term risk of having a company full of intelligent people is actually very small. Yeah. That the long-term risk is very, very small. The alternative is that you employ people who are less intelligent, who employ people who are less intelligent, and then your company will begin to fall apart. And you know, madness is symbolic of taking the wrong path. Bad communication is symbolic of taking the wrong path. And you need to trust your employees to understand what it is that you're doing.